following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Got your blood.
Keep following the leader.
Oh my God.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Shine, flies, no time to waste while it's passing you by. Shine, flies, be patient, 'cause good things happen in time. We gon' get it right, we gon' get it right, we gon' get it right, we gon' get it right.
Protests and anthems, yes, we chanting a movement of people. It's like we dancing to the ministry of, it's the energy of, in memory of them that we love. The trinity of the people, the peace, the power, the truth. We speak the powers even louder. We can say it blacker, we can say it prouder. A woman vice president that went to Howard. Now we talk helping black businesses, and our differences is magnificent. Bringing light to the point where the prisons is. I was told good life is where forgiveness lives. The ascension is to leave what's left behind and feed the seeds with deeds that bless the mind, caress the mind, and question justify. With you and God in time, my best align.
Shine, fly.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai, your host and Chief White House correspondent. I'm in touch, so you be in touch. Follow me on all the social media platforms: TikTok, Substack, Facebook, Instagram, Spill, all of them at Dr. Nii-Quartelai. Just type in Dr. Nii-Q, DRNIIQ, and there I am, fresh for you to follow. And if you're going to be in Providence, Rhode Island on March 18th, that's Tuesday, March 18th, I'm really delighted to accept an invitation from Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, the Iota Alpha chapter, as well as the Brown Center for Students of Color, to participate in a book talk. I'm talking about my best-selling book, Kamala, the Motherland, and Me. It's a thought-provoking, what I hope will be a thought-provoking book talk, really sharing insights from what was a powerful exploration of identity and heritage and all the things on the continent through the lens of Vice President Kamala Harris's historic rise. We're talking race and the diaspora and democracy and how it's shaping contemporary leadership. And so many thanks to the folks over at Brown University for that invitation to be in conversation with some really dynamic young people, young leaders on the front lines. And so if you're in Providence, get at me. Would love to be in conversation with you. I would love to have you be a part of that. All right, now it's time for your national news roundup. It's time for you to decide the good, bad, and ugly headlines of the day. And speaking of Brown University, NBC News reporting that a Brown professor was deported to Lebanon after allegedly attending a Hezbollah funeral. That's what the government is saying, at least. A professor at Brown University's medical school who was sent back to Lebanon just last week despite having a valid visa, allegedly told customs agents that she had attended the funeral of Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of the Iran-backed Hezbollah. The Department of Homeland Security, this is what they said in a statement just earlier today. Dr. Rasha Alawi, a 34-year-old Lebanese citizen with a valid H-1B visa, returned to the United States after visiting her family, according to a court petition that was filed by her cousin. She was detained Thursday at Boston Logan International Airport, where she was allegedly held for 36 hours without any justification, during which time she was unable to speak to legal counsel or contact others. That's what the petition says. Homeland Security alleged on Monday, just today, that Alawi told agents during her detainment that she had traveled to Beirut, Lebanon last month to attend Nasrallah's funeral. They went on to say that a visa is a privilege, not a right, glorifying and supporting terrorists who kill Americans as grounds for visa issuance to be denied. That's what the agency said. NBC News and others were unable to reach the attorney for Alawi for a comment today, but tens of thousands of people attended the funeral, which was held at a 48,000-seat sports city stadium in Beirut. Nasrallah led Hezbollah, Lebanese militia and political party, for decades before he was killed by an Israeli strike last year. He was also an Islamic scholar who was seen as a defender of Shia Muslims within Lebanon. And so a lot of pieces to the story, but what feels like a selective prosecution, if you can even call it. The Department of Homeland Security, being judge and jury. It doesn't seem that there was any due process here, but we're going to be following the story very closely in the days ahead as more information becomes available. But it sends shockwaves to folks across this country who may not be U.S. citizens, but they're here on visas. And it sends a message that not only you have to watch what you say, but you got to watch what funerals you attend. And to me, with regard to this story, the fact that she didn't have access to her legal counsel, to me, creates a little bit of suspicion, right? And so let's all take this with a grain of salt and keep in mind that we are mostly hearing we're mostly getting information from this petition that was filed by this family member, but a lot of this information is coming from the Department of Homeland Security. And so, again, as more information becomes available, we'll be sure to return to this story with updates. In other news, the Washington Post is reporting that Helene blew through nearly 6 months ago, but guess what? North Carolina's recovery has barely begun. Now, nearly 6 months has passed since the remnants of Hurricane Helene ravaged western North Carolina, and the first home had yet to officially be rebuilt. That's what we're hearing. The recent hearing that took place, which included Governor Josh Stein's newly created recovery office for Western North Carolina, they said that we want to see some people being made whole. That's what they told officials. But that doesn't seem to be happening. The recent hearing encapsulated tension surfacing after Helene barreled through North Carolina, claiming more than 100 lives, destroying or damaging more than 185,000 homes, knocking out thousands of bridges and roads, wiping out businesses and farms, and leaving an estimated, get this, $60 billion of economic ruin in its wake. So there's a real conversation that is afoot here in this country with regard to disaster relief. There's a serious conversation to be had, whether we're talking about North Carolina, we're talking about Altadena, and too many places in between. How can we make sure that the people that need the relief and support the most, they get that? How can we make sure we're keeping folks accountable, right? And so this conversation isn't going anywhere. This conversation is clear and present. And again, today, this is a story coming out of North Carolina, but tomorrow, this could be a story coming out of a city near you, out of a state near you. And so that's why we need to pay attention to this. You can't build a more perfect union if you have an imperfect emergency response, if you have an imperfect system of disaster relief. And so we'll continue to keep our eye on that. Moving along, the Washington Post is also reporting that, of all places, Utah is on path to end automatic mail ballots after a wave of misinformation. Utah is poised to abolish its practice of automatically mailing ballots to all voters, handing a victory to President Trump and MAGA Republicans who have vilified voting by mail since the 2020 election defeat. The likely changes in Utah are modest compared to what Trump calls for, which is ending mail voting altogether. But nonetheless, it marks a dramatic shift in a Republican stronghold that has long embraced mail balloting as convenient and secure. The fact that this is happening in Utah is the canary in the coal mine. Under a bill approved by the GOP-controlled legislature, starting in 2029, election clerks would stop mailing ballots to all registered voters and instead send them only to those who request them. Governor Spencer Cox has praised the legislation as brilliant and is expected to sign it soon. Mark my words, this is a test case. Again, today this is happening in Utah. Tomorrow, it may be happening in your state, if not a state near you. Finally, NPR reporting on how Alabama students went from last place to rising stars in math in Alabama. In DeKalb County, Alabama, an elementary school math class, would typically be sort of a noisy place, but this is where students are rolling up their sleeves and turning things around. DeKalb, you see, is part of a statewide success story in math. Alabama is the only state where fourth grade math scores are higher now than they were in 2019 before the pandemic, at a time when President Trump is working to close the U.S. Department of Education. In order to move education into the states, Alabama's math turnaround shows states are already having control. It shows states already having control of their educational destinies, or so they say. And a lot of people calling this a model for how districts can accelerate student learning in math. And so we look forward to having one of our resident education experts on to help unpack this, because, sometimes there's more than what is on the surface. When we come forward, I am excited to welcome Richard Brookshire. He's co-founder of the Black Veterans Project. We're going to be talking about a ProPublica investigation that caught my eye, may have caught yours. The Office That Investigates Disparities in Veterans Care is being liquidated. Yeah, we're going to talk to Richard Brookshire about this and more. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
The revolution will not be televised.
What's up? It is Killer Mike, also known as Michael Render, and I'm encouraging you to listen to More Not Less of Truth Time with Dr. Cornel West and Senator Nina Turner on KBLA Talk 1580.
Our daughter Jessie loves playing detective.
A clue.
But since we discovered she has sensitive skin, we've been playing detective too.
We thought the problem was our puppy.
But it was actually our old detergent.
Aha.
So we switched to Tide Free and Gentle. Tide Free and Gentle provides an excellent Tide clean, and it doesn't leave behind irritating residues like dyes or perfumes. So it's gentle on your skin.
Case closed.
If it's got to be clean, it's got to be Tide Free and Gentle.
Taxes was feeling so stuck. Sitting in traffic, squeezing into a parking spot, all to squeeze in getting tax help during your lunch break. Now Taxes is a TurboTax expert who does your taxes for you, while you go about your day getting real-time notifications about their progress and the most money back guaranteed. Now this is Taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service, real-time updates only in iOS mobile apps. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Autopsy Initiative provides a second autopsy free of charge for victims' families who have lost their loved ones due to a police-related death. The services offered through the initiative include the completion of a second autopsy, disclosure of preliminary findings, and a final autopsy report. A police-related death is when an individual is harmed by police officers using deadly force, which results in an individual's death. police-related death includes in-custody deaths, including those that arise during contact with law enforcement officers during arrest, pursuit, booking, transport, or incarceration. The Autopsy Initiative has a team of board-certified pathologists on call. An autopsy request may be completed by anyone with a close relationship with the victim, which may include the victim's spouse, partner, relative, close friend, or lawyer. To request a free second autopsy for a victim of police violence, please visit knowyourrightscamp.com. That's knowyourrightscamp.com. Then click on Autopsy, then click on Request. At KBLA, we believe in justice for victims of police violence. We say their names, and we don't black down. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio that's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We have no permanent friends or permanent enemies. Only permanent interests. As we effort to build a more perfect union.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai, and really delighted to welcome back to the show our friend, Richard Brookshire. He is the co-CEO and co-founder of the Black Veterans Project. Welcome back, Richard.
Hey, how you doing? It's good to be here.
I'm hanging in there. You know, there's a lot of news swirling, and particularly news that that we can use, news that people really need to know about. We try not to be too gratuitous with sharing news coming out of Washington that's just anxiety triggering for people. But there's some stories people just need to know. And one of which was reported by ProPublica. They reported that the Office That Investigates Disparities in Veterans Care is being liquidated. For folks who are less familiar, the Trump administration has shut down a unit of the Department of Veterans Affairs created under President Biden to address disparities in how the federal government provides disability compensation to military service members. We know that a lot of veterans are going to be impacted by this, Richard, but talk to us about the disproportionate impact you expect from Black veterans and other veterans of color.
Yeah, so the office was created several years ago in response to a host of different things, but decades of advocacy by Black veterans groups, and more explicitly work that we had done with Yale Law School to uncover systemic inequities that existed in disability compensation. So the new secretary under the Trump administration says that, well, disparities don't exist. Well, that actually goes against the data, and it also goes against the data that's undergirding a landmark lawsuit against the VA called Monk versus United States. Part of the response of the Biden administration was not only the creation of this office, but also a partnership with the NAACP to explicitly try to root out where discrimination was occurring, to begin to investigate the places in the country where disparities were most concentrated. And they were really just starting to dig into that work. And because of the Monk case moving forward in court, kind of being held to account in many ways to ensure that that work was actively transpiring, they've since abandoned their relationship with the NAACP, and they've liquidated that office under the guise that, you know, discrimination isn't happening, which we know not to be true.
Now, as reported by ProPublica, the office was eliminated as a part of Trump's purge of programs broadly aimed at addressing diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so I think it's just important just to put a finer point on this, that when we think about the war against all things related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, people don't necessarily think about the folks in harm's way. And in this case, you know, there are veterans, people who have served our country courageously, heroically abroad, right? Who all they want is what they've earned. They're not asking us to give them anything. They want what they've earned. And this office that was set up to help us recognize where there were disparities in terms of delivering what folks were earned, right? This office is being shut down. right? And so talk to us about some other ways in which this war on diversity, equity, and inclusion is in fact a war on our veterans.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a misnomer to believe that, equity work only affects Black folk or LGBTQ folks, and that's just a misnomer. When you talk about equity, especially for veterans, it talks about aging veterans. It talks about veterans that live in poor communities. That talks about veterans with disabilities. Obviously, that crosses the color line, and so making sure that equity is in any system, whether it applies to veterans or does not, ensures that the broad swath of folks who would be marginalized, if not for proactive efforts to ensure that they have the same level of accessibility as others, that does not occur. I mean, I think that there's so much being, to your point that you made earlier, so much being thrown out at once. I mean, even last week, there was the erasure of Black and women veterans from Arlington National Cemetery's website. There was even, I think yesterday or today came out over the weekend that there was deliberate erasures of historical entries on Department of Defense websites. We know that there's a purge happening around Black leadership at the Department of Defense. And that's, obviously not directly correlated to the VA, but in many respects it is, because there is that direct line between serving in the military, which is under the Department of Defense, and then obviously, getting access to care when you become a veteran under the Department of Veteran Affairs. So, yeah.
And so talk to us about how the Black Veterans Project is responding to this. I can only imagine how challenging it has been to prioritize your response when I'm sure you have so many competing priorities related to your mission. If it's not this, it's the tens of thousands of federal workers who have been let go from the Department of Veterans Affairs. And so I think that only makes matters worse, no?
Of course. I mean, this reduction in services is going to be quite harmful, especially with the rollout of one of the biggest programs that the VA has ever adopted, the PACT Act, which happened about 2 years ago, which was to address a chasm in care that affected generations of veterans who had been exposed to toxic things in war. And so we know that's people are going to die based off of these reductions, most certainly. And then there's so much happening at once. I mean, we were just taking meetings on the Hill last week. This semester, we're working with the former head of the NAACP, Cornell Brooks, who's a professor now at the Harvard Kennedy School, working with the Trotter Collaborative for Social Justice, thinking through a repair and reform legislative agenda, kind of knowing that this is going to be a long game, not just about continuing to foster a level of reparative justice, which has always been at the core of our mission, but also now thinking about the reforms that are going to be necessary, given a lot that's happening with the deconstruction of programming and the dismantling of diversity, equity, and inclusion at VA.
My goodness. And so talk to us about where you all intend to go from here. I mean, are you all focused more on impact litigation for folks that are maybe just learning about the Black Veterans Project? Talk to us about some of the how you are responding to what you can respond to at this moment, and more importantly, how our leaders, learners, and listeners can support you in standing up for our Black veterans.
Absolutely. So there's several things that we're kind of taking on this year. As you can see, I now have a co-CEO named Kyle Bibby, and he's come on full time with me to work on this work, a former Marine officer. And we are focused on impact litigation. So in the storytelling that's necessary to help to support that. We'll be rolling out membership for Black Veterans Project. So it's not just folks who are Black vets or descendants of Black vets, but anybody who supports the case for reparative justice can become a formal member of the organization. One of the things that we'll also be rolling out, actually beginning in Mississippi, is a series of workshops to assist Black vets in filing SF-95s as we look toward helping to support impact litigation, like I said, and kind of broader efforts around litigation. And that's just some of what we planned around even in the next few months to be rolling out. You guys can obviously support through donations to the project on our website. There'll be opportunities through membership to get more formally involved. But as of right now, we're just in strategy mode. We're trying not to get too distracted by all that's coming down the pike. And we worked directly with ProPublica to raise the alarm on the closure of the Office of Equity Assurance. So continuing to work with journalists and making sure that there is coverage around a lot that's happening, because many times, without a direct kind of collaboration, a lot of these things kind of get overlooked. So again, having the opportunity to come on and speak through you is also part of the work.
Absolutely. And what do you all see coming down the pike from the Trump administration? One thing that I certainly have noticed is that there are a number of executive orders that tend to be signed on Friday nights. There is guidance that's given. There are EOs that are released over the course of the weekend, right? Which, creates a very disorienting atmosphere for advocates out there. And so, talk to us about how you're seeing this administration move, and more importantly, how the Black Veterans Project is sort of, attempting to meet the moment, given that this administration moves differently from administrations we've seen in many administrations in recent years.
And I think one of the things that we've been talking about internally is that it is likely that the administration is going to attack the 501c3 statuses of social justice organizations, that we wouldn't be immune from that as a nonprofit. And so we're making sure that we're implementing a strategy that can withstand that if it does come to pass, that they do attack the 501c3 statuses of social justice organizations. We're being proactive about building out relationships with other civil rights and social justice groups, other veterans groups, really working in community, so not working singularly, and bolstering our grassroots support. That's partly why we're rolling out membership, so that we can actually, start to point to numbers and have a direct line to the folks that support what we're endeavoring to do.
Well, our thanks to Richard Brookshire, the co-CEO of the Black Veterans Project. Keep up this consequential work, and we look forward to having you on again soon.
Thanks so much. Always appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. More when we come forward. You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered about national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, you tuned into the right place. A More Perfect Union continues when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. Black HUD Secretary Scott Turner and Interior Secretary Doug Burgum announced a task force to identify federal land for affordable housing. They aim to streamline land transfers and cut red tape to boost supply and lower costs. Housing affordability remains a key issue, with 69% of voters highly concerned about rising prices. Wall Street is closing in the green on St. Patrick's Day. Investors largely shrugged off a weaker than expected February retail sales report ahead of a 2-day Federal Reserve policy meeting on interest rates. Corinne Rankin is the first Black woman to chair the California GOP, elected at the party's Sacramento convention. She replaces Jessica Patterson and defeated former state senator Mike Morrell for the role. And the Pentagon removed the webpage on Black Medal of Honor recipient Major General Charles Rogers, now showing a 404 error with DEI in the URL. Rogers was honored in 1970 for Vietnam War bravery. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
La Cañada 210 westbound, delays away from Foothill, slowing in stretches all the way to Hubbard Street, the eastbound side of the 210. We're seeing some crowded conditions out of Sunland into Tahunga, and then ahead in Pasadena away from Mountain in stretches all the way to the 15 freeway. Into the Cajon Pass on the 15 northbound, that's loading up off of the 210 all the way to Cleghorn. Southbound slowing away from Ranchero Road as you continue back towards Cleghorn. And it's also slow moving in Orange, 57 northbound from Chapman Avenue and stretches all the way to the 60.
Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice: continue their dream of education or drop out to help their family put food on the table. You can help change their future in a single moment. See how far your support can go at unbound.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
In the NCAA men's basketball tournament, 2 HBCU schools receive automatic bids to the 60-18 field. Norfolk State, champions of the MEAC Conference, and Alabama State, champs in the SWAC. Both teams are facing a tough challenge to advance. Alabama State has a play-in game on Tuesday against St. Francis of Pennsylvania in Dayton, Ohio. 3:40 p.m. tip-off on True TV. If Alabama State wins, they'll play Auburn, the number 1 seed in the South Regional, on Friday in Lexington, Kentucky. Norfolk State also has a matchup with the number 1 seed. Norfolk State faces Florida, the number 1 seed in the West Regional, on Friday in Raleigh, North Carolina. That's a 3:50 p.m. tip-off on TNT. Stay with us on KBLA for updates on how men and women's teams from HBCU schools are doing in the NCAA tournament. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Got your black.
Follow the leader.
Oh my God. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
I feel so alone.
I'm embarrassed to talk about it.
How can I help my kid if I can't help myself?
I can't remember when I wasn't stressed.
I don't like it inside.
When you feel overwhelmed by your thoughts and emotions, it's okay to get help. You are not alone. CalHope is here for you with free, safe, and confidential mental health resources for youth, young adults, families, and you. Find support now at calhope.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you that we keep us safe. Every girl deserves a chance to shine. That's the belief behind Forgiving for Living, Inc. Since 1999, this organization has been empowering at-risk girls ages 13 to 18, helping them overcome behavioral and mental health challenges. Founder Wendy Gladney's personal journey inspired the mission to give girls hope and purpose through the power of forgiveness. Through their ambassador program, workshops, and annual conference, Forgiving for Living has touched over 3,000 young lives, providing mentoring, life skills, training, and tools for building self-esteem and confidence. You can make a difference. Visit forgivingforliving.org to donate, volunteer, become a mentor, or find help for a young girl in need. Forgiving for Living, Inc., building brighter futures for young girls. Visit forgivingforliving.org today. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Hit me!
National news of consequence, informed opinion, and analysis beyond the headlines. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai, and really delighted to welcome Rod Warner, who is a psychotherapist. If you haven't heard, you may want to check out Rod Warner Counseling. You can go to rodwarnercounseling.com to learn about some of the work that they're doing there, their clinical mental health therapy practice that is centering Black couples, it's centering Black men, and with everything that's trending in the news, therapy is not a bad idea as we do our work in so many different forms to stay healthy, not just from the neck down, but the neck up. Welcome, Rod Warner.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Doc. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for being here. And so, first things first, are you seeing any new or different trends thus far this year? It feels like, March 64th, and it's only March 17th, 2025. But I mean, there's so much in the news, and it feels like there's so much more hostility directed to folks that are part of the Black community and communities of color, the queer community. Is it just me, or does it feel like there has been an uptick?
I'm not going to say it's just you. I have noticed a slight. A lot of people are very disappointed. A lot of people are very upset, sometimes at themselves and what's going on. One of the things that I've noticed was a lot of disappointment in the past election because Kamala Harris didn't win, and I have a lot of African Americans, especially females, are very disappointed, and they didn't like the outcome.
They didn't. So, and certainly there are elections that happen every year, right? Presidential election every 4 years, but there are congressional elections, there are special elections that happen. Somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose.
Right.
That's par for the course. But based on what you've been hearing from some of your clients and what you've seen in your work, what's made this last election pointedly different from other elections?
Well, the mere fact of it is they had an expectation. And anytime that you have an expectation, you have a preferred person that you thought was going to win, they didn't get the desirable outcome. So that level of disappointment fused them. Hey, we're going to make history. Not just the first woman, but the first African-American woman and the first AKA. And a lot of times, one of the Divine Nines being in the high seat of the office, or the country, I should say, was very disappointing.
Now, your practice over at Rod Warner Counseling, and you have a practice in the Dallas and Houston areas. You focus on Black couples, Black men, and Black women. Why did you decide to create a practice that narrowly focused on us? And how have you seen in your practice more broadly that Black folks have not been served well? And so I would imagine that may be part of the inspiration for why your practice is set up the way that it is, no?
Yeah, well, the reason why I created it because as Black men, we're not taught that we have feelings, and we do feel, and we want to be seen, and we want to be heard. This is a level of validation that we need. We must have that level of acknowledgement, and it's almost sometimes our men, we're just supposed to, like the one reporter said about LeBron, just shut up and dribble. So just shut up and go to work. And we're not taught that our feelings matter.
We aren't, and so what are some of the everyday tools that you find yourself empowering your clients with that could service a number of our leaders, learners, and listeners?
Well, the thing of it is one thing I promote is confidence. So using our words mean something. Our words are very important. They guide us. So when you don't trust your words, you begin a level of self-doubt. Then that looks like a lie. So if I say one thing and I do something else, it's known as a lie. So now you're not reliable. And our words mean something. So I really help the men and the women for that, to hold them accountable to their words, because whatever you say does matter. Your words does matter. So we don't want to lie to ourselves, because that creates a level of anxiety, and anxiety looks like fear over period of time.
So a big part of what folks find to be very triggering is when people just don't do what they say they're going to do, right? And so, I mean, if we walk away from this conversation empowered to do anything differently, it sounds like the one thing we could do that might have a big impact on our relationships is to be more reliable and to do what you say and say what you mean.
Right, because we judge things. Men are judged based on outcomes. We want to be held to a standard. Hey, the results. What's the end results? So if you say you're a man, that means you have to walk, talk, act like a man. If you say you're a hard worker, where's the results? If you say you're a father, where's the results? So we're held to a different standard, Doc, and we hold ourselves accountable. Are we going to show up like we say we're going to show up? And a lot of times we'll fall short. So even with the election and politicians, are they going to do what they say they're going to do? And when they don't, they feel lied to. And this here brings on pain. And pain is very necessary, but it's very heartbreaking. And that's what happened even back to that original question you asked me about the election. What I brought up was the mere fact people were disappointed. They were heartbroken because they had a level of expectation that they thought was going to come out the way that they was hoping it to be. And it's the same thing in relationship with yourself. So when you break your promise to yourself, it feels like a lie.
Yeah. When we come forward, I want to get your take on some of the training that you've had. I know that you've trained at the Kenyatta Black Counseling of Trauma and Grief organization, and we want to learn just a little bit more about what they're about and how that helped you to build your practice. And then I want to talk about just sort of the role of friendships. I was talking to a friend recently, and their suspicion was that Black men have a smaller core friend group compared to Black women. I don't know if there's any truth to that, but I think we got the right one to help us understand that. When we come forward, more with psychotherapist Rod Warner on some of the insights he's gleaned, counseling Black couples, Black men, Black women. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
Striving to make America a nation as good as its promise. This is A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Boy, hey, you okay? You don't normally miss those shots.
Oh, I just haven't been as regular lately, and it's making me feel sluggish.
You should try Metamucil. It's been a game changer for me. Metamucil's plant-based psyllium fiber helps trap and remove the waste that weighs you down. Ace, you're moving better than you were last week.
Definitely.
Metamucil keeps you moving. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Learn more at Metamucil.com. I occasionally have nerve discomfort in my hands, so the things I love to do...
Let's play something, Grandma.
...became difficult as I got older.
If you have occasional stabbing and burning in your hands and feet, try Nervive Nerve Relief. Nervive's clinically studied dose of alpha-lipoic acid reduces occasional nerve discomfort in as little as 7 days with continued daily use. Say yes to healthy nerves with Nervive Nerve Relief. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
They say the hardest part of getting something done is getting started. Well, we did that 30 years ago when California first took on the tobacco industry. Now, smoking is down 60%, lung cancer 42%. A couple of our cities have already ended tobacco sales. A California without big tobacco isn't just possible, it's already happening. See our progress at undo.org.
Small businesses are the heart of America. But you don't have to go it alone. As the nation's largest nonprofit resource of expert business mentoring, SCORE has helped millions of entrepreneurs build their businesses for free. Get the connections, education, and guidance you need with SCORE. We're ready to help. Find a mentor today at score.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Worried about eviction? You have rights, and Stay Housed LA can help. Stay Housed LA is a partnership between LA County, the City of Los Angeles, and local service providers. From Lancaster to Long Beach, we're here to help you with tenant education workshops, legal clinics, free legal services for eligible tenants, and online resources about tenant protection laws. Don't face eviction alone. Call our hotline at 1-888-694-0040. That's 1-888-694-0040. Or visit stayhousedla.org. Stay Housed LA, keeping Los Angeles residents in their homes. Stay Housed LA, your rights, your home, our community. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Notable journalists, industry leaders, lawmakers, change makers, tastemakers, and you working to build a more perfect union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai. He is Rod Warner. He's a psychotherapist that is active in the Dallas and Houston areas. He specializes in counseling for Black couples, for Black men, for Black women. And we are really delighted to have you here with us to help us sort of separate the fact from the fiction. We know here that we can't be about the business of building a more perfect union if we're not about the business of building a more perfect you, right? You know, you got to be filling your cup. You know, you got to be taking care of yourself, again, from the neck up and neck down. And that's where your work comes into play. Talk to us about some of the training that you had at Kenyatta's Black Counseling of Trauma and Grief. Tell us about that training, because I wasn't aware that there was an entity that specialized in Black trauma and grief.
Right. Well, working with Kenyatta is, first of all, she's a heck of a supervisor. Kenyatta and I actually were in grad school together, and she started her practice before I did. And man, just the level of insight and the skill set that she has, and the teaching is incredible. And I suggest anybody who are looking for a supervisor to look her up. But there was another guy that I want to mention who trained me as well, is Dr. Moses Chism. Dr. Moses Chism is a very insightful man, very bright, brilliant guy. But he came up with the 6 pain languages. And Dr. Gary Chapman came up with the 5 love languages. But he came up with the 6 pain languages. And the 6 pain languages, you can't have love without pain. You can't have up without down. You can't have right without left. So pain, and a lot of times when people come to see us, they're suffering from some type of pain or some type of grief.
Wow, interesting. And so talk to us about, what are the 6 pain languages? I'm familiar with Dr. Gary Chapman's 5 love languages, which I highly recommend.
Okay.
As a tool, right? It's not the only tool, but it's a tool. But I'm not familiar with the 6 pain languages.
Well, Dr. Chism, like I said, he was in graduate school with me. There are 6 pain languages. The first one is abandonment. When people suffer from abandonment issues. The second one is abuse. When kids, or when we're kids, we deal with abuse in a younger age. We tend to act it out adult life. And then there's anger. There are certain traits that will make you feel angry. These are triggers. And then there's confusion. When you're in confusion, you don't know which way to go. You don't understand where the individual is coming from. Confusion, that will make a person being a pain language, and also fear. Fear is a pain language that a lot of times we go through, and that will stop us from moving forward. And the last one is pridefulness. When we have pridefulness, when our ego kicks in, that's when you hear terms of narcissistic personality on that spectrum. So when we're triggered, any of these pain languages, that puts us in fight, flight, or freeze mode. And we, when we don't know how to master love and manage the pain, that's what Dr. Chism teaches. So his pain language, what I do, learning from him, I come in and identify your pain language. So this is what triggers you. And so you have a negative response. So what makes you feel good? That's the love. But also what triggers you. So most time we're responding in a negative way to our pain. That puts us in fight, flight, or freeze mode.
Interesting. Wow. Well, you are definitely giving us our homework here. Opportunity to really sort of dig into the 6 pain languages. Just as you laid that out, I was thinking about, sometimes when people may raise their voice, they may yell, right? Like I certainly don't like when people yell. I don't have a tendency to yell a lot. And so when people yell at me, it makes me feel some kind of way, right? But that may be triggering one of these pain languages, right? Similarly, if people say they're going to do something and they don't do it, they don't show up, they're no call, no show, right? That may trigger your, abandonment pain language, and so forth. And so very interesting. I didn't know anything about the 6 pain languages until you came on. And so thank you for that.
Yeah.
Let's talk. Oh, go ahead.
One quick second. When you were talking about someone yelling at you, that can make you, when they mishandle you, or you feel threatened, especially if you've been abused. If someone verbally abused you, emotionally abused you, or physically abused you, with someone yelling at you, that will activate that pain. And what happens is you heard people say, "Enough! You're not gonna do me like that." Well, especially if they happen in the childhood trauma, they're the adult trying to protect the younger version of them. So they're saying enough. So these are the triggers. So if you can manage that, this was a level of awareness. You're not aware of what you have been through. So what Dr. Chism has taught me that I've utilized was how to manage. That manage means being aware. Now I'm aware. So you hear the term, if I know better, you do better.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
There you have it. There you have it. In our remaining minutes, Rod, I want to ask you about friendships, right? So there's this idea out there that, men versus women, when it comes to men versus women, that men may have smaller sort of friend circles, right? And that may play a role in terms of, protecting our mental health, right? Optimum mental health. There's this idea that, women have, stronger core friend circles. Is there any truth to any of this?
You have to understand this here. Men are very loyal. We're not faithful. We're only faithful as an option, but we're very loyal. And we're very loyal. The same friends that we grew up elementary school, Pee Wee League, middle school, high school, college, even we go to the same barber for years. We're very loyal with that. Sometimes women have a high turnover rate when it comes to a friend. And then you have to define the level of friends, or they're associates, comrades, or actually true friends. So that can get really tricky, but men are very loyal. So when they lose a friend for whatever reason, part of them seems like it's gone with them. And they try to replace that at times. And it's kind of hard to replace.
And so in our remaining minutes, if there is one thing that we can do to be a better friend? What is that?
Keep your word. Keep your word. Because we expect people to show up when it's time for them to show up. Whatever you say, your words mean everything. What you say and what you do matters. So watch your words. My question I always ask my clients, do you believe everything that you say?
That, look, spoken from the psychotherapist right here. Thank you for blessing us with that insight. We'll have to have you back on. And we would love for our leaders, learners, and listeners, to tap in. Also, I'm sure if I've got questions, I'm sure a lot of folks listening have questions, and so utilize the open mic feature on the KBLA app. And if you have a question for psychotherapist Rod Warner, feel free to drop it using the open mic feature, and we'll call them together. And next time we have Rod Warner on, we'll be sure to answer as many of your questions as possible. But today we have to leave it here. Thank you, Rod Warner.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Doc.
Thank you. And my thanks to the entire village who helps us produce a more perfect union each and every day. Our executive producer, Tavis Smiley, our sound engineer, Andy, our show producers, Kim and Faraji and Art, and of course, each and every one of you, all of our leaders, learners, and listeners. We appreciate you. We love you. Be sure to do what you can from where you are with what you have. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Corte, and you've been listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.